You left the relationship months ago, but you still wake up at 3 a.m. with your heart racing. You're exhausted all day, but your mind won't stop at night. Your brain knows the threat is gone, but your body acts like the danger is still here. You search, why do I feel like I'm constantly in danger after a breakup? Wired and tired feeling. Chronic fatigue but can't sleep. The answers talk about stress and anxiety, but they don't explain why your body won't calm down. Here's what most people don't realize about stress biology. Because this isn't about willpower or moving on. This is about a hormone called cortisol and what happens when it stops shutting off. Here's what nobody tells you about leaving a toxic relationship. Your conscious mind can accept that it's over. You can rationally understand you're safe now. But there's another part of you, your nervous system, that doesn't process thoughts. It processes patterns, threats, survival. This response is predictable, not personal. And when you've been in an environment where danger was unpredictable, where safety was inconsistent, where you never knew what version of your partner you'd encounter, your nervous system learned one lesson. Stay alert. Danger could return at any moment. Neuroscience confirms that the nervous system learns threat through repetition, not through rational thought. Your body may still interpret calm as the prelude to danger. This creates a biological state called cortisol dominance. And once your body enters this state, it doesn't just recover because the threat is gone. It waits for proof, biological proof, that the danger has truly passed. Biology explains this pattern clearly. The problem is this: most people think cortisol is released because something bad happened. That's not how it works. Cortisol isn't a reaction to past pain. Cortisol is a prediction of future danger. Your amygdala, the threat detection center in your brain, doesn't wait for danger to hurt you. It identifies patterns that preceded danger in the past and prepares your body before that danger arrives again. This is a common biological response to prolonged emotional stress. This is why toxic relationships create such severe cortisol dysregulation. In an unpredictable environment, your amygdala cannot form a reliable safety pattern. Your body learns calm is unsafe, because calm often preceded the explosion, silence before the storm. So even after you leave, your body doesn't interpret peace as safety. It interprets peace as the waiting period before the next attack. Let me show you what's actually happening inside your body. Your mind and your body operate on completely different timelines. Your prefrontal cortex, the thinking part of your brain, processes meaning, logic, time, cause and effect. When the relationship ends, your prefrontal cortex knows it's over. It can rationalize, accept, move forward. But your nervous system doesn't work that way. Your amygdala and autonomic nervous system don't process thoughts. They process patterns, threats, survival. When you experience emotional trauma in a relationship, your body doesn't file this as a memory you can recall and discuss. It becomes something called somatic memory, body memory. Research on trauma demonstrates that threatening experiences are stored as implicit body memory, not conscious recollection. It's stored as a physiological pattern in your nervous system. You may notice your body reacting before you're consciously aware of why. This is not something you consciously remember. It's something your body automatically responds to. Trauma doesn't stay in your explicit memory, the memories you can access and talk about. It converts into implicit nervous system memory. Your nervous system updates through a process called predictive coding. This is where your brain anticipates future threat based on past patterns rather than reacting only to the present moment. This involves a network called the salience network, which includes the anterior insula and anterior cingulate cortex. These regions decide what feels dangerous or important to your body. They're constantly comparing what's happening now to what happened before, asking, does this situation match a pattern that preceded danger? If the answer is yes, even partially, your body prepares for threat. Your mind understands the relationship is over, but your nervous system was trained for danger. And it doesn't update on emotional timelines. It updates only when it receives repeated signals of safety. Your body doesn't measure healing in days or months. It measures healing in the absence of threat. This brings us to why cortisol stays elevated long after the threat is gone. This pattern appears consistently in prolonged emotional stress. In highly unpredictable environments, cortisol becomes chronically elevated because the threat prediction system never disarms. Your body learns a devastating pattern. Calm is unsafe. Because in a toxic relationship, calm often preceded the next explosion. So even when the relationship ends, your body doesn't interpret peace as safety. It interprets peace as the waiting period before the next attack. Cortisol isn't released because something bad happened. It's released because your body expects something bad to happen again. When this prediction system remains active for long periods, your body enters a state called allostatic load. Studies on chronic stress demonstrate that allostatic load is the cumulative biological burden that accumulates when stress systems fail to reset. Your body is no longer responding to stress and then recovering. It's living in a constant state of stress adaptation. The system that was designed to activate temporarily and then rest is now activated permanently. This is where the damage begins to accumulate. But here's what most people don't understand about how you got stuck in this state. Survival mode is not something you choose to activate. It's something your body learned through repeated exposure to threat. This is classical conditioning at the nervous system level. Neuroscience calls this a conditioned threat response, an automatic survival program learned through experience. Your nervous system learns through repetition, building automatic responses to protect you. When you experience repeated emotional threat, criticism, volatility, manipulation, unpredictability, your nervous system begins to associate certain cues with danger. A tone of voice, a certain silence, a facial expression, a time of day. Over time, these cues automatically trigger a survival response. No conscious thought required. Your nervous system's default state changes. Instead of resting in calm with occasional threat responses, it begins resting in vigilance with occasional moments of calm. This is why leaving the relationship doesn't immediately restore peace. Your nervous system was conditioned in that environment, and conditioning doesn't disappear simply because the environment changes. It requires active reconditioning, repeated experiences of safety to unlearn. Repeated threat exposure also reduces inhibitory GABA signaling. GABA is your brain's natural calming system. Biology shows that GABA functions as the nervous system's primary inhibitory neurotransmitter, the brake that stops threat responses. It's the neurotransmitter that tells your nervous system to slow down, stop the alarm, return to rest. But chronic threat depletes GABA activity. This makes your nervous system faster to activate and slower to return to rest. The brake system weakens. So even small triggers can set off a full stress response. And once activated, that response takes much longer to calm down. Survival mode isn't a switch you turn on. It's something your body learned when leaving wasn't safe. Now we need to address something specific to how men experience this biology. Men are conditioned to suppress emotional signals. This isn't a judgment, it's a cultural and biological reality. When emotional distress arises, many men have been trained to ignore it, push through it, or suppress it. But suppression is not the same as regulation. Your body may interpret emotional suppression as confirmation that threat is still present. When you suppress an emotional signal without processing or resolving the underlying threat, your body interprets this as continued danger. Because the signal wasn't resolved, it was just silenced. This keeps stress hormones active. Your body doesn't calm down because you're ignoring the distress. It ramps up because the threat that caused the distress is still perceived as present. Research shows that suppression often extends the duration of cortisol elevation rather than shortening it. Chronic emotional suppression may also disrupt oxytocin signaling. Oxytocin is the hormone involved in safety perception and social regulation. Studies on stress recovery show that oxytocin acts as a biological safety signal, telling the nervous system threat has passed. It's released during positive social bonding, physical touch, and moments of felt safety. It tells your nervous system, you are safe, you can lower your defenses. But when you chronically suppress emotions and avoid vulnerable connection, oxytocin signaling becomes disrupted. This prevents your nervous system from fully recognizing safety even when it's present. Your body loses access to one of its primary biological signals that threat has passed. And this connects directly to testosterone. Endocrine research confirms that survival hormones actively suppress reproductive hormones when the body prioritizes threat response. When cortisol stays elevated, testosterone production is suppressed at every level of your body's hormonal system. Men who suppress emotional signals deny their body the proof of safety it needs to deactivate the threat response. Without that deactivation, cortisol remains high and testosterone remains suppressed. Ignoring stress doesn't calm the body. It convinces the nervous system that danger is still present. And this creates another devastating feedback loop. Chronic cortisol elevation disrupts your sleep architecture. It prevents you from reaching deep restorative sleep stages. And testosterone recovery happens primarily during deep sleep. Research on sleep and hormones show that testosterone production peaks during REM and deep sleep, the stages that cortisol blocks. If cortisol keeps you in light, fragmented sleep, testosterone cannot recover, even if the external stressor is removed. This happens through a specific brain system called the locus coeruleus norepinephrine system. This system maintains vigilance, keeping you alert even when you need to rest. The locus coeruleus is a small region in your brainstem that produces norepinephrine, a neurotransmitter that maintains vigilance and alertness. Under normal conditions, this system is active during the day and quiet during sleep. But chronic cortisol elevation keeps the locus coeruleus norepinephrine system active even at night. Neuroscience demonstrates that sustained norepinephrine activity prevents the brain from entering restorative sleep stages required for recovery. Your brain remains partially awake, scanning for threat even when you're trying to sleep. This is why you wake up at 3 a.m. This is why you feel exhausted but can't stay asleep. Your body is depleted from sustained stress, but your brain cannot fully shut down because it's stuck in threat scanning mode. When cortisol stays high, testosterone doesn't just drop, it's intentionally shut down to conserve energy for survival. And it will remain shut down until your nervous system receives sustained signals that survival mode is no longer necessary. This brings us to one of the most important things you need to understand. Time alone does not heal chronic stress. That's true for acute stress. If you experience a single traumatic event, an accident, a sudden loss, a one-time threat, your cortisol will spike, then gradually return to baseline over days or weeks as your body processes the event. But chronic threat operates differently. Biology explains that acute stress has a natural resolution curve, but chronic stress creates sustained activation that requires active intervention. Chronic threat is not a single event your body can process and file away. It's a pattern your body learned to expect. Patterns don't dissolve with time. They dissolve with new information. And patterns don't dissolve with time. They dissolve with new information. Your nervous system needs repeated safety signals to update its threat prediction model. Prolonged stress exposure can also trigger low-grade neuroinflammation. Neuroinflammation is a state where immune cells in your brain, specifically microglia, remain activated. These cells are normally protective, clearing debris and fighting infection in the brain. But under chronic stress, they shift into a prolonged inflammatory state. Research on stress and inflammation shows that activated microglia release inflammatory signals that reinforce the brain's threat detection systems. This inflammation reinforces threat prediction. It creates a biological feedback loop where inflammation tells your brain that something is wrong, which maintains the stress response, which creates more inflammation. This is one reason why chronic stress can feel impossible to escape even when the external stressor is gone. The inflammation itself has become a signal of danger. Silence is not safety. The absence of active threat is not the same as the presence of safety. Your body doesn't interpret the end of danger as safety. It waits to confirm the danger has fully passed. And without explicit, repeated signals that safety is present, regulated nervous system states, predictable environments, secure connections, the body remains in a defensive posture. Distance from the stressor is not the same as nervous system reset. You can be thousands of miles away from a toxic relationship and still carry the biological signature of chronic threat. Because your nervous system doesn't measure distance, it measures safety. Time only heals what the body believes is over. Chronic threat doesn't end, it waits. And when cortisol remains elevated for an extended period, weeks, months, or longer, your brain doesn't just stay stressed, it adapts. One of the primary adaptations is the development of hypervigilance. Hypervigilance is not paranoia. It's not a conscious choice to worry. Research on trauma and the nervous system identifies hypervigilance as an adaptive state where threat detection becomes your brain's default mode. It's an automatic, subconscious state where your brain continuously scans the environment for potential threats. This happens because your amygdala and associated threat detection networks become overactive. But the threshold for what registers as danger has been lowered dramatically. Small noises, unexpected movements, changes in tone, ambiguous social cues. You may notice heightened reactions to stimuli that wouldn't have affected you before. All of these can activate your full stress response because your nervous system has been trained to expect threat in unpredictable forms. Long-term cortisol exposure affects your hippocampal regulation. Your hippocampus is critical for memory and context processing. One of its key jobs is to help your brain recognize when a threat has ended by comparing current context to past memories. It's supposed to tell your amygdala, this situation is different, that threat is not present now. Neuroscience shows that chronic cortisol causes structural changes in the hippocampus, reducing its volume and impairing its regulatory function. But chronic cortisol damages hippocampal function. It reduces the hippocampus's ability to regulate the amygdala and provide context. This keeps your threat scanning system active even when danger has objectively ended. Your brain loses its ability to recognize that the threat is over. This creates what's called the wired and tired state. Your body is physically exhausted from sustained cortisol elevation and poor sleep, but your brain cannot fully shut down because it's stuck in threat scanning mode. Even when you do sleep, your brain remains partially activated, monitoring for danger. You wake frequently. Your sleep is light and unrefreshing. And because deep sleep is when your body performs most of its hormonal and physical repair, this fragmentation prevents recovery. Testosterone production stalls, muscle repair is incomplete, cognitive restoration doesn't occur. Your brain stops resting and starts watching. Here's what you need to understand. Every symptom you've experienced, the 3 a.m. wake-ups, the exhaustion that sleep doesn't fix, the inability to relax, the feeling that danger is still present. This wasn't weakness. This wasn't failure to move on. This wasn't your fault. Biology confirms that these are not character flaws. They're conditioned nervous system responses to chronic, unpredictable threat. This was your nervous system doing exactly what it was trained to do: predict danger, maintain vigilance, keep you alive. Your body learned that calm was unsafe, that peace preceded pain, that letting your guard down meant being hurt. And it's still following that programming, even though the threat is gone. Understanding this changes everything, because now you know the hypervigilance isn't paranoia, the sleep disruption isn't insomnia, the chronic cortisol isn't anxiety. It's allostatic load, it's conditioned survival response, it's predictive coding gone wrong. It's biology, and biology can be changed. But understanding what broke is only the first step, because when your nervous system stays in this state for months or years,
The damage doesn't stop at hormones and sleep. It reaches your cognitive function, your emotional regulation, your neurological structure itself. The hippocampus continues to shrink. The prefrontal cortex begins to degrade. Your ability to make decisions, regulate your emotions, and form new memories, all of it starts to break down. Research on prolonged stress shows this process is called neurological remodeling, the brain physically restructuring under chronic threat. This is called neurological remodeling, and it's what we'll cover next. If this explained what you've been living through, you're not alone. Millions are trapped in this state right now without understanding why their body won't let them heal. The next video will show you the neurological damage that follows, and more importantly, how your nervous system can be retrained. Because this is not permanent. Your body adapted to threat. It can adapt to safety, but only if you understand what needs to change. See you in the next one.